Hi everybody, it's Chris and welcome to another video by the Infinity System. Today's episode is titled Frozen Moments, Time, Memory, and DID. This episode came about as the result of a comment that one of our viewers, Lisa Bauer, left on one of our live streams where we were talking about our alters in our system being time-locked, frozen within the span of time from which the abuse occurred, and I believe the actual question was on final fusion or fusion of alters, and we had been explaining that for our system anyway, because we were locked within these spans of time, it probably wasn't going to be possible, just simply because of the way that the trauma is encoded on the brain. But this set us to thinking about this and delving more into it, and data being data, he went digging in order to find a very comprehensive answer to Lisa's question. And we've actually covered some of this information on our live stream, so you might have heard some of this before, but if not, stick around. If not, go ahead and take off. But let's start off with the obvious. Exactly what is time? Time is defined as a continued sequence of existence and events that occurs in an apparently irreversible succession from the past through the present and into the future. Time is a component quantity of various measurements used to sequence events, to compare the duration of events or the intervals between them, and to quantify the rates of change of quantities in material reality or in the conscious experience. Or, to a layman, what a clock reads. But what is more important here is how humans perceive time. Chronoception, or the study of time perception, is a field that encompasses three separate disciplines: psychology, cognitive linguistics, or the study of how language and the brain works, and neuroscience, which we covered in the past, the study of the brain. These different areas of study together examine the subjective experience, or the sense of time that humans possess. Your sense of time is measured by your perception of the duration and the unfolding of events. The perceived time span that happens between two events is called perceived duration. This is basically how long you're perceiving something in between to take place. Now, while it's impossible to directly experience someone else's perception of time, it can be observed and conclusions can be drawn from the data. Okay? Now, this leads us to what is called a temporal illusion, which is a distortion in your perception of time. Examples of this would be, say, time flies when you're having fun, or, oh my god, I'm stuck at work, and it is 3:30, and I'm out here at 5, and time has slowed to a crawl. I mean, the clock is literally going... These are the type of things that we're talking about. A watch pot never boils. Another good example is how time seems to slow to a crawl under dangerous conditions. Say, for example, in a car wreck, folks will often remember it in, still frames or time slows down. This is due to an effect called chronostasis, which is a temporal illusion where when the brain is given a new event or task, it freezes for a moment before adapting to the new input. This can be actually observed and deliberately triggered by making a quick eye movement and then concentrating on a new stimulus or an old stimulus in order to change it. Now, if this sounds familiar, this is exactly the response that the therapeutic technique EMDR utilizes. This also explains why the EMDR technique may not be of benefit to DID, OSDD, or CPTSD sufferers, due to the fact that as the trauma has been encoded onto the brain by the amygdala and sectioned off, thereby sealing the event away. When you attempt to redirect those memories, redirect the flashback using the chronostasis or EMDR technique, this essentially causes your brain to A, replay the flashback, the focus, but instead of ending it or redirecting the memory, B, your brain hits the end of the recording and can go no farther, except to restart the sequence and loop back around, which is where you get caught in the flashback loop. So how does this tie in with DID? Is this just all in the brain? No. There are, no pun intended, there are direct physiological associations that go along with this perception and these time dilations, or these perceptual time changes. Tachypsychia is a neurological condition that alters the perception of time. This is usually induced by extreme physical exertion, drug use, and especially traumatic events. For someone who is affected by tachypsychia, time as is perceived by the individual either lengthens, making events appear to slow down or stop entirely, or it contracts, with objects appearing to move in a blur in fast speed. So it's easy to see that trauma directly affects your perception of time. Now, as we talked about before, because of the stress response cycle, those who are in great fear or who have been previously traumatized experience a greater time dilation in response to the same threats, and even children who are as young as 3 years old have also exhibited a capacity for the same time dilation effects under extreme stress, under the trauma or the intense trauma or the repeated trauma. The amygdala kicks in and decides, okay, the psyche can't deal with this. We can't deal with this situation right now. And it encodes the event onto the posterior-medial cortex, as we covered in our Recovered Memories video. Go ahead and check that out for more detail. When the trauma event is encoded, the awareness of self and of the time and your perception of time is also recorded or frozen in place in that recording. This includes any temporal illusions or tachypsychia that you might be experiencing at that point in time. The confusion, the sense of time dilation that studies have shown that children as young as 3 can experience. So that, along with the trauma itself, everything, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the taste, your perceptions of time, any senses of time dilation or anything else is encoded into the recording, essentially leaving the EP locked within that slice of time. So this begs the argument of, is an EP created by a single event or is it a group event? And this may well explain this recording of these EP states over that time span of how certain alters may seem to age slide within it, because they're shifting between the collected memories of their group. So EPs may draw on or be aware of the ANP's perception of time and space, but will be unable to bridge that gap, that mental disconnect between their slice of time and those hard-coded perceptions and the present. This goes on with Mimi all the time. She's aware that the body is in the future because of the evidence of the technology that is familiar but more advanced to her. But if she starts to try to reconcile that, we start to get one of our nasty TITH headaches, which any system can tell you are brutal. They're called transitional interpersonality thunderclap headaches, and they're bad. These are caused by changes in the vascular or blood pressure in your brain as you switch or as you undergo a flashback. These are not to be trifled with. If the alter pushes as it was, or if you push too hard, this is why forced switches are a bad idea. There is a direct danger of embolisms, a stroke, which is where a blood clot breaks free because the pressure is too much and then goes and the next thing you know, you've got scrambled eggs for brains. So don't push, particularly when you're feeling that TITH. That is your dead canary in the coal mine giveaway. That you need to take it easy in self-care, that it's time to end the therapy session or whatever it is and self-care, because you might pop a blood vessel if you don't. So take it seriously. Okay, so back to time. Now, ANPs will have a more complete sense of linear time because they operate in the outside world. But as the LEPs are affected by the EPs, they are in turn affected by the LEPs. And as you remember, all of those perceptions, all of those feelings, all of those sensations, as well as any temporal illusions, like the chronostasis, are present in that recording. So we have all of those in the background affecting the ANPs, who have their own sense of time, but there's all of this wibbly-wobbly stuff in the background. Now, we're conjecturing that this could be the cause of grayouts, blackouts, and possibly time loss. Again, this is purely our suppositions here, so don't take this as rote fact. But this also explains why the duration of time lost is not the same each time. So what happens is we end up with anywhere from a few minutes missing, to a few hours, to a few days, etc., as we're affected by the time illusions that were originally recorded onto the brain. So, in addition to all of the other lovely effects that systems have to deal with, from the encoding of the trauma that made us the systems that we are, you can see where some of the confusion and some of the unease and uncertainty about time comes from. We often feel like we're unstuck in time, or caught between two different moments in time, or that we don't simply belong in this time or space at all. And maybe now we have a few answers on why we feel that way. Well, guys, that's all for this time, and assuming that most of you actually made it this far, and Lisa, hopefully you did as well, we hope that we gave all of you some food for thought, and Lisa hopefully provided you with a few much overdue answers to your good questions. So that's it for this time, guys. We'd like to thank you, as always, for helping to support the channel. We really do. It really does mean a lot that you guys watch and tune in and comment. And shout out to the live stream community out there. And we'd also like to take this moment to remind you, as always, that you are loved, that you are strong, and that you're not alone. I'm Chris. Thanks for watching.